The emergency beacon cut through hyperspace like a knife through silk, its desperate signal reaching every corner of the known galaxy. On Centauri Prime, the Council of Advanced Species gathered in their crystalline chamber, their multicolored forms shimmering with concern as they analyzed the transmission. "The message is clear," announced Vexter, the Centauri Prime Minister, his voice resonating through the telepathic network. "The Void Hunters have broken free from their prison dimension. They consume entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake." The assembled representatives from dozens of species shifted nervously. The Kithara, with their technology that could bend reality itself, remained silent. The Nexari, masters of time manipulation, offered no solution. Even the ancient Etherians, beings of pure energy who had witnessed the birth of galaxies, seemed paralyzed by the scope of the threat. "Our projections show they will consume the outer rim colonies within 2 standard cycles," continued Vexter. "The inner worlds will follow shortly after. We need immediate action." Silence filled the chamber. Each species had reasons to hesitate. The Kithara had just ended a brutal civil war. The Nexari were dealing with temporal anomalies in their home system. The Etherians claimed their intervention might disrupt the cosmic balance. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the human observer section, her jaw clenched with frustration. Earth had only recently been granted observer status in the galactic community. Most species still considered humans primitive, barely worth acknowledging. Their technology was centuries behind the advanced races. Their military laughably small compared to galactic standards. "Perhaps we should convene a research committee," suggested the Nexari representative, its form flickering between past and future states. "We need to understand the Void Hunters better before taking action." "Research?" Sarah stood up, her voice cutting through the chamber's murmur. "While entire worlds are being devoured." The chamber fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the small human section. Sarah felt the weight of their attention but continued, her voice steady and clear. "The Outer Rim colonies sent that distress signal 3 days ago. How many worlds have died while you've been discussing research committees and cosmic balance?" Vexler's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "Commander Chun, your species' emotional responses are ... However, this situation requires careful consideration from beings with appropriate capabilities." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. She had spent months watching these advanced species debate while actual problems demanded immediate action. Their technology might be superior, but their paralysis was absolute. "What capabilities?" Sarah asked. "The capability to discuss a problem until it solves itself. The capability to find excuses while people die." The Kithara representative, a being of shifting geometric patterns, pulsed with indignation. "Your species lacks understanding of galactic warfare. The Void Hunters are not mere raiders. They are cosmic parasites that consume the fabric of reality itself. Our combined fleets barely contained them during the first invasion. And how many species participated in that first invasion?" Sarah asked. The chamber grew uncomfortable. Vexler's form dimmed slightly. "That was different circumstances? The threat was more localized then." Sarah accessed her personal communicator, pulling up the data her team had gathered. "According to your own historical records, the Void Hunters were stopped by a coalition of 12 species. Today, we have representatives from over 40 species in this chamber. Your combined technological capabilities have advanced exponentially since then." She paused, scanning the alien faces around her. "Yet you're more afraid now than you were 1,000 years ago. Why?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah saw the truth in their flickering forms, their shifted postures, their nervous energy patterns. They had grown comfortable in their advanced civilization. The idea of actual warfare, of real sacrifice, terrified them more than the Void Hunters themselves. "Commander," the Etherian representative spoke, its voice like wind through crystal, "your species' warrior instincts are well documented. But this is not a conflict that can be resolved through aggressive simplicity." Sarah almost laughed. "Aggressive simplicity?" Is that what you call actually doing something? She activated her communicator's projection system, displaying a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red indicators marked the Void Hunter incursions, spreading like an infection through the outer rim. Look at this spread pattern, Sarah said, highlighting the affected sectors. They're not random raiders? They're following hyperspace shipping lanes, targeting infrastructure worlds first. They're cutting off supply lines and communication networks before moving to population centers. The chamber murmured with surprise. Several representatives leaned forward, examining Sarah's analysis with new interest. Your species noticed this pattern? Asked the Nexari representative, its form stabilizing into present-time focus. We've been tracking it since the first distress call, Sarah replied. While you've been debating, we've been analyzing. The Void Hunters aren't just consuming worlds randomly. They're implementing a strategy. She expanded the display, showing predicted attack vectors based on the current pattern. If we move now, we can intercept them at the Kepler Junction before they reach the heavily populated Antares sector. Vexler S. form brightened with what might have been interest. Your tactical assessment is surprisingly sophisticated. However, implementing such a plan would require significant military commitment from multiple species. And you're not willing to make that commitment. Sarah stated flatly. The silence that followed confirmed her assessment. These species had grown too comfortable, too risk-averse. They would debate and analyze until the Void Hunters consumed everything worth protecting. Sarah made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She activated her emergency communicator, broadcasting on all human frequencies. This is Commander Sarah Chun to all Earth Defense Force units and allied colonial fleets. We have a code black scenario. The galaxy is under attack, and Earth is responding. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of protest and disbelief. Commander! Vexler S. voice cut through the noise. Your species lacks the capability to engage the Void Hunters alone. Sarah turned to face the Prime Minister directly. Maybe, but we lack something else your species seem to have developed, the capability to do nothing while innocents die. She began walking toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the crystalline chamber. Earth's response fleet will launch within 12 hours. Any species willing to actually fight instead of debate is welcome to join us. As she reached the chamber doors, the Etherian representative called out, Commander Chun, this is madness. Your species will be destroyed. Sarah paused at the threshold, looking back at the assembled representatives. Perhaps. But at least we'll be destroyed trying to save others instead of destroyed cowering in committee meetings. The doors sealed behind her with a crystalline chime. In the chamber, 43 advanced species sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. A primitive species had just volunteered to face a threat that paralyzed civilizations thousands of years. Older and infinitely more advanced. Sarah strode through the corridors of the Zentari station, her mind already planning the impossible. Earth's combined fleets numbered fewer than 200 ships. The colonial defense forces might add another 100. Against the Void Hunters? It was barely more than a gesture, but sometimes gestures mattered more than capabilities. Her communicator buzzed with incoming messages from Earth. Admiral Martinez was already mobilizing the home fleet. The Mars Defense Corps was preparing to deploy. Even the asteroid mining guilds were volunteering their cargo haulers for support duties. Sarah smiled grimly as she boarded her transport ship. The galaxy's advanced species had forgotten something crucial in their comfortable civilization. Sometimes the only rational response to impossible odds was irrational courage. As her ship departed the Zentari station, Sarah watched the massive structure recede into the distance. In a few hours, she would lead humanity's tiny fleet against an enemy that had already consumed a dozen worlds. The odds were astronomical against them, but humanity had never been very good at respecting odds. Behind her, in the crystalline chamber, the debate continued. 43 species discussed risk assessments and casualty projections while the Void Hunters consumed another star system. They would debate until there was nothing left to protect. Sarah's ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying word of humanity's response to every human world in the galaxy. Earth had answered the call. They would not answer alone. Within hours, human ships began converging on designated rally points across known space. Colony defense fleets abandoned their patrol routes. Merchant vessels volunteered for supply runs. Even civilian ships modified themselves for evacuation duties. The galaxy had called for help. Only humanity had answered. Now they would discover what that answer truly meant. The Void Hunter fleet materialized at the edge of Kepler Junction like a cancer in space. Where their ships existed, stars dimmed and space itself seemed to recoil. Admiral Martinez watched the tactical display as 350 enemy vessels arranged themselves in a formation. That made no sense to conventional military. Thinking, they're not following any recognizable battle doctrine, reported Commander Reynolds. It's like they're positioning themselves to consume space rather than control it. Martinez nodded grimly. Because that's exactly what they're doing, Dr. Patel. Are our quantum cascade weapons ready? All ships report cascade drives prepared, Admiral. But I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the enemy fleet. They seem to be adapting to our presence. Adapting how? The reality distortions are becoming more stable. It's as if they're learning to exist more fully in our dimension. Martinez felt ice in her stomach. How long before they complete this adaptation? Based on current progression. 18 minutes. Then we go now. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. Execute Battle Plan Lazarus. Across the human fleet, 217 ships began their attack run. It was named after Lazarus because Dr. Patel had jokingly said they were about to rise from the dead or join them permanently. The mining guild ships went first, their massive industrial lasers cutting through space toward the Void Hunter fleet. The beams passed harmlessly through several enemy vessels before Dr. Patel's modifications took effect, causing the laser frequency to shift into quantum disruption patterns. The effect was immediate. Where the modified mining lasers struck, Void Hunter ships began to flicker like bad hologram projections. Their reality distortions wavered, causing them to partially phase back toward their home dimension. It's working, Dr. Patel shouted. The quantum disruption is forcing them to choose between dimensions. They can't exist fully in both. Military vessels execute Cascade Firing Pattern Alpha. Martinez commanded. 30-7 human military ships began the controlled destruction of their hyperspace drives. Beams of pure quantum disruption lanced out toward the enemy fleet, each one carrying wounds in the fabric of space-time itself. The Void Hunters responded with their own weapons. If weapons was the right term, reality simply ceased to exist where their fire passed. The escort vessel U Ranger vanished completely, not destroyed but simply edited out of existence. Casualties? Martinez demanded. Ranger is gone, Admiral. Sensors can't even detect debris. It's like the ship never existed. Martinez clenched her jaw. This was the enemy that had paralyzed 43 advanced species. She was beginning to understand why. Mining ships execute ramming pattern. All vessels with nuclear charges target the enemy formation center. 22 cargo haulers loaded with nuclear mining charges began acceleration runs toward the Void Hunter fleet. Their crews had volunteered for one-way missions, using manual guidance systems to ensure accuracy. The first cargo hauler to reach the enemy fleet struck a Void Hunter vessel dead center. The nuclear explosion should have vaporized both ships. Instead, the blast seemed to fold in on itself, creating a brief but brilliant implosion that dragged 3 nearby enemy vessels partially back into normal space. Dr. Patel, what just happened? The nuclear explosion created a temporary reality anchor. The quantum energy release forced the Void Hunters to solidify in our dimension for approximately 47 seconds. Martinez's mind raced. All ships with nuclear weapons, coordinate detonations for maximum reality anchor effect. We're going to force them to exist long enough to kill them. The human fleet adapted its tactics on the fly. Cargo haulers with nuclear charges began coordinated ramming runs, while military vessels focused their cascade weapons on temporarily solidified targets. The mining ships used their industrial equipment to herd enemy vessels into kill zones. It was chaos, but it was working. The Void Hunter fleet began to show signs of confusion. Their perfect formation dissolved as ships found themselves trapped in normal reality by nuclear reality anchors, becoming vulnerable to cascade weapons that tore them apart at the quantum level. "Admiral!" Communications Officer Park called out urgently. "We're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Multiple species fleets are jumping into the system." On the tactical display, new ships began appearing throughout the Kepler Junction system. Zentari crystalline dreadnoughts materialized near the asteroid belt. Kithara reality bender ships emerged from dimensional folds. Even the ancient Etherians had deployed their energy form vessels. "Are they here to help or watch us die?" Martinez asked. "Unknown, Admiral. They're maintaining distance from the battle zone." Martinez turned back to the immediate problem. Half the human fleet was gone, their ships stranded after firing cascade weapons or destroyed by Void Hunter reality attacks. But they had eliminated over 100 enemy vessels using tactics that no advanced species had ever conceived. "Admiral," Dr. Patel reported, "the surviving Void Hunters are beginning to retreat toward the system edge. They're trying to phase back to their home dimension?" "Like hell they are. All remaining ships, pursue and engage. Don't let a single one escape to regroup." The chase was desperate and brief. Human ships, many running on emergency power after cascade weapon discharge, pursued an enemy that was literally fading from existence. The mining ships used their last nuclear charges to create reality anchors, trapping fleeing Void Hunters long enough for cascade weapons to finish them. When the last Void Hunter vessel dissolved into quantum foam, the Kepler Junction system fell silent except for the hum of human ships, running on auxiliary power. Of the 217 ships that had answered the call, 63 remained operational. Another 41 were stranded but intact. Their crews alive, but their hyperspace drives destroyed. "Fleet status report," Martinez ordered quietly. "Casualties approximately 40%. "Admiral, but—" Reynolds paused, checking his readings again. "Ma'am, we eliminated the entire Void Hunter invasion fleet. Total enemy casualties, 350 vessels." Martinez sank into her command chair, the weight of victory and loss pressing down on her. They had done it. Humanity had faced a threat that paralyzed advanced civilizations and won. "Admiral," Park interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the Zentari fleet." On screen? Vexler's crystalline form appeared, but his usual composed demeanor was completely gone. The Prime Minister's entire structure flickered with what could only be described as shock. "Admiral Martinez," he began, his telepathic voice uncertain, "our sensors confirm total elimination of the Void Hunter fleet. How ... How did you accomplish this?" Martinez stood slowly, feeling every hour of the battle in her bones. "We didn't overthink it. I don't understand. Your species analyzed the Void Hunters for decades. You studied their technology, their dimensional phasing abilities, their reality-consuming weapons. You understood them so well that you convinced yourselves they were unstoppable." She gestured toward her tactical display, still showing the debris field where the enemy fleet had died. "We didn't understand them at all. So we treated them like any other enemy and shot them until they stopped moving." Vexler's form pulsed with something that might have been embarrassment. "Your simplistic approach seems to have been effective." "It wasn't simplistic," Martinez corrected. "It was desperate. There's a difference." More transmissions began coming in. The Kithara expressed amazement at humanity's innovative reality manipulation. The Nexari admitted their temporal analysis had never predicted such tactics. The Etherians spoke of humanity's unexpected quantum intuition. Martinez listened to it all with growing irritation. These species had capabilities that dwarfed anything humanity possessed, but they had been paralyzed by their own sophistication. "Admiral, Dr. Patel approached quietly. "I'm detecting something unusual. The quantum echoes from our cascade weapons are still resonating throughout this system, and they're spreading. Spreading how? The quantum disruptions are propagating along hyperspace lanes throughout the galaxy. Any Void Hunter vessels still in dimensional phase will be forced back into normal space within the next few hours." Martinez stared at her science officer. "You're telling me our weapons created a galaxy-wide anti-Void Hunter field?" "Essentially, yes. By forcing them to exist fully in our reality, we've eliminated their primary advantage. Any Void Hunter forces still out there will be vulnerable to conventional weapons." As if summoned by her words, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Void Hunter raiding groups that had been terrorizing the Outer Rim suddenly found themselves solid and vulnerable. Within hours, local defense forces that had been helpless against the dimensional raiders were reporting total victories. "Admiral Martinez," Vexler's transmission resumed. "The Galactic Council wishes to formally thank humanity for your unprecedented response to this crisis." Martinez looked around her damaged bridge at her exhausted crew. "Prime Minister, with respect, your thanks are noted. But next time the galaxy faces extinction, maybe don't spend 3 days debating while people die." She cut the transmission before he could respond. Days later, as recovery fleets began arriving to assist stranded human vessels, Martinez stood on the observation deck of a Zentari rescue ship. Through the reinforced viewing ports, she could see the human fleet assembled at Kepler Junction looked pathetically small against the backdrop of space. 217 ships of various classes, most showing the wear of constant patrol duties. Admiral Elena Martinez stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Defiance, studying the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "Ma'am, we're receiving signals from across the galaxy," reported Communications Officer Park. 37 human colonies have committed their defense fleets. The asteroid mining guilds are sending 42 modified cargo haulers. Even the deep space research stations are contributing personnel. Martinez nodded. In the past 18 hours, humanity had done something the advanced species hadn't managed in decades of galactic civilization. They had unified completely in the face of a common threat. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" she asked. "Still debating, Admiral. Though we're detecting some unusual activity around several advanced species' home systems. Long-range sensors suggest military mobilization, but no official communications." Martinez wasn't surprised. The galaxy's advanced species were cautious creatures, but they weren't stupid. They would wait to see what happened when humanity engaged the Void Hunters before committing themselves. "Admiral," called out Science Officer Dr. Patel from her station, "we're getting our first close-range scans of the Void Hunter formation. The readings are disturbing." The main display shifted to show a three-dimensional representation of the approaching enemy. Where normal space should show the familiar patterns of matter and energy, the Void Hunter fleet created holes in reality itself. Their ships didn't travel through space so much as consume it, leaving empty voids behind them. "Estimated fleet strength?" Martinez asked. "Difficult to assess, ma'am. Our sensors can barely detect them. But based on the reality distortions, we're looking at approximately 350 vessels of unknown configuration." Martinez felt her stomach tighten. The human fleet was outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. Facing an enemy they barely understood with technology they couldn't match? "Ma'am," interrupted Tactical Officer Reynolds, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zentari station. On screen." The image of Vexler materialized on the main display, his crystalline form flickering with what appeared to be agitation. "Admiral Martinez, I must strongly urge you to reconsider this course of action. Our latest analysis suggests the Void Hunter fleet is significantly larger than initially estimated." "How much larger?" Martinez asked bluntly. "Our projections indicate total human fleet destruction within the first engagement." Martinez smiled coldly. "Your projections didn't account for one thing, Prime Minister. Which is? We're not planning to fight fair. She cut the transmission before Vexter could respond. Around the bridge, her crew exchanged glances that mixed nervousness with grim determination. "Admiral," Dr. Patel spoke up hesitantly, "I've been analyzing the Void Hunter movement patterns. I think I understand how they operate." "Explain." "They don't consume matter in the traditional sense. They consume the quantum vacuum itself, the underlying structure of space-time. That's why our sensors have trouble detecting them. They exist in the gaps between normal reality." Martinez frowned. "What does that mean tactically?" "It means conventional weapons might pass right through them. But it also means they're vulnerable to certain types of quantum interference." "What kind of interference?" Dr. Patel's eyes lit up with the fervor of discovery. "The kind generated by our hyperspace drives during emergency shutdown procedures. The quantum cascade effect we've been trying to eliminate as a safety hazard, it might be our only effective weapon." Martinez stared at her science officer. "You're suggesting we weaponize hyperspace drive failures?" "Not failures, Admiral. Controlled cascade events. If we can synchronize the quantum resonance across multiple ships, we could tear holes in their ability to exist in our reality," finished Martinez, understanding immediately. "How long to implement?" 6 hours, maybe 7. "But Admiral, there's a catch. There always is. The cascade effect will destroy our hyperspace drives in the process. Any ship that uses this weapon will be stranded wherever the battle takes place." Martinez looked around her bridge, meeting the eyes of each crew member. She saw fear there, but also resolve. They understood the implications. Using this weapon meant accepting that many of them would never go home. "Opinion, people?" she asked quietly. Communications Officer Park was the first to respond. "Admiral, I've got family on New Terra. If the Void Hunters reach the inner colonies... Tactical Officer Reynolds nodded grimly. "My daughter just had her first baby on Mars colony." "Worth the risk, ma'am." One by one, every bridge officer voiced their agreement. Martinez felt a surge of pride that threatened to overwhelm her professional composure. "Dr. Patel, you have 7 hours to turn our entire fleet into one-shot weapons." "Commander Reynolds, I want contingency plans for every possible scenario. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." "Ma'am," interrupted Park, "incoming transmission from the Mining Guild ships. They're requesting permission to modify their industrial equipment for combat use." Martinez raised an eyebrow. "What kind of modifications?" "Well, ma'am, apparently asteroid mining lasers can be reconfigured for alternative purposes. And their cargo haulers want to load up with nuclear mining charges for ramming attacks." Martinez shook her head in amazement. "Approved. Tell them to get creative." As her crew worked frantically to prepare for an impossible battle, Martinez walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the human fleet spreading out in defensive formations. Mining ships flew alongside military vessels. Research craft worked side by side. With colonial defense cutters, her communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Earth Command. She opened it to find a simple text from the Secretary-General of Earth. "The whole planet is watching. Make us proud." Martinez closed the message and stared out at the stars. In the distance, she could see the first reality distortions that marked the approaching Void Hunter fleet. Dark patches where space itself seemed to twist and fade. "Admiral," Dr. Patel's voice came over the intercom. "We're ready for the first test of the Cascade weapon?" Martinez returned to the bridge to find her crew manning stations with grim efficiency. On the tactical display, a single escort vessel, the UES Pathfinder, had separated from the main fleet. "Pathfinder reports ready for Cascade initiation," Reynolds announced. "Execute test firing." On the display, the Pathfinder's hyperspace drive began to overload in a carefully controlled manner. Instead of exploding catastrophically, the ship channeled the quantum cascade into a focused beam of reality disruption. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the beam struck empty space, a jagged tear appeared, a wound in the fabric of reality itself. Through the tear, they could see something that hurt to look at directly, the void between dimensions where the Void Hunters originated. "My God," whispered Dr. Patel, "it actually works. Pathfinder status?" Martinez demanded. "Hyperspace drive destroyed, but hull integrity intact. They're reporting all other systems nominal." Martinez nodded grimly. "The weapon worked, but every ship that used it would be trapped here, win or lose." "Fleet-wide communication," she ordered. Every ship in the human fleet received her transmission simultaneously. Martinez looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words would reach every human who had volunteered for this mission. "This is Admiral Martinez to all fleet personnel. In approximately 4 hours, we will engage an enemy that has defeated civilizations far more advanced than ours. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting with weapons we invented 6 hours ago." She paused, letting that sink in. "The galactic community expects us to fail. They expect us to run or die or both. They see us as primitives playing at war against gods." Another pause. "They're wrong. Not about our technology. They're absolutely right that we're primitive compared to them. They're wrong about what that means. We're not advanced enough to be paralyzed by overthinking. We're not sophisticated enough to be afraid of the impossible. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten." She leaned closer to the camera. "Every ship in this fleet volunteered to be here. Every person aboard chose to face extinction rather than watch innocent people die. That's not primitive, that's human." The transmission ended. Around the fleet, crews made final preparations for battle. The Mining Guild ships finished mounting their improvised weapons. The research vessels calculated optimal targeting solutions. The military ships coordinated attack patterns. In the distance, the void in space grew larger. The Void Hunter fleet was approaching, consuming reality as they came. Soon, humanity would face its greatest test, but for the first time since receiving the distress call, Martinez felt genuinely optimistic. The advanced species had debated while worlds died. They had hesitated while innocence suffered. Humanity had answered the call. Now, they would show the galaxy what that answer truly meant. "Admiral," Reynolds called out. "Sensors detect massive hyperspace disruptions throughout the galaxy. It looks like other species are finally mobilizing their fleets." Martinez smiled grimly. "Too late to help us, but not too late to matter. They're waiting to see if we can actually hurt these things. And if we can't, then at least we'll have bow."